Hi, hey, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to this video. Here's the sitch for today. We're going to go over essentially like Q4 reading, but not really because I don't want to. But I thought that I have done, I think, Q1, Q2, and Q3. So I was like, well, I want to put something up just to complete the series. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? So I figured we would do story graphics for Q4, and then I would give you 5 books that I DNF'd, 5 books I gave 5 stars, 5 books I gave 2 stars, 5 books that I reread, and 5 recs, because we just ended 2025. Get it? Ha ha ha. So let's start with, do we want to start positively? Do we want to start negatively? Let's go with negative, because I'm secretly a negative Ned, and it is what it is. So the 5 books that I DNF'd were, I guess, should I move over and give you like them here, were The Nightshade God. I DNF'd this book because I was really into the trilogy at one point. Also, I think the first book came out in like 2023, and I was definitely a different reader then than I am now. And I read the second one, and I think I also enjoyed it, but it didn't hit me. It didn't feel as yummy as the first book. And so I was like, oh, I'll finish the trilogy, because I was really excited. And then there was just something about it. I think the reincarnation of gods, at the point of which I picked this book up and then DNF'd it, it was not the first time I had read a story about reincarnated gods, and I was kind of over it because it didn't really feel interesting. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder how it ends. So maybe I should borrow it from the library and just like read the last chapter or Google it. So we'll see. The next one was The Whispering Night. This was a YA trilogy. Again, I feel like this book came out while I was still living in Austin, so it had to be at least 2022, if not 2023, maybe even 2021 when I was reading this. Yeah. I don't know. It's about, the series is about these different, I guess, factions of this like community, and they all go by a certain day. So there's like the Mondays, the Tuesdays, the Wednesdays, the Thursdays, the Fridays, and they patrol like a forest, and it's a magical forest. And depending on what day you are, you have like a certain responsibility and or like a place that you're like stuck in. And I don't really know why I liked the first book or the second book, because I pretty easily caught on to what was happening, obviously. But then the third book came out, and I think I ends because I didn't even know this third book was out yet. And I promptly got like 30 pages in and was like, no, not for me anymore. I'm not. I think this was the year that I really realized that YA, unfortunately, is like no longer for me. Like I have grown past enjoying YA for the most part, because I still will pick up a YA here or there, but I feel like a good chunk of my reading was definitely like YA when I was first starting, which obviously makes sense as a new like reader, but not anymore. Sometimes I'm just like, although I do have like on my shelf currently, I can spot 2 YAs I have. So we'll see. I DNF'd a Merry Irish Christmas. That was an ARC I received, but I DNF'd it after the book had already come out because I think I got the audiobook from the library. And it was giving 2012 in the worst possible way. And I have come across this in a couple of times of reading a book, and it's giving 2012, 2016, but being written like now. And I'm just like, here's the thing. I lived it. I was there. And there are parts that we can definitely romanticize, but there's like a tone that I don't ever want to go back to. And it was giving that tone. I think it was I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to describe it. But it was giving 2012, 2016 in the worst possible way. And I said goodbye. I DNF'd Dark Matter. That book, I started reading it, I was like, this is giving 2016. And in fact, I believe published in like 2016. But I DNF'd this book because it was interesting. It hooked me. I was intrigued. Because I was like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing. We're doing whatever. I picked up on where we were going. But in the middle of the book, I wanted to take the man and just shake him. Because, like, what do you mean that instead of figuring out how to get back to your life and your wife and your son who you repeatedly forgot about, you're over here harassing the woman who is your wife or not your wife in different universes. Just because you love her so much that you have to go find her in every universe and like harass her. And like, I get the romantic sentiment of like, I would find you in every universe. Like, hello, I love Arcane. In every universe, through every time, it was always you. Like, I get it. But there's just something about it being told through this perspective of how like going and like harassing someone at her art gallery who looks at you like you're an idiot and then just being bummed that she doesn't realize that it's like you. And it's like, of course, because you are not you in this universe either. He's somewhere else. Like, I don't know. There's like a pandemic one and he gets one of them killed. Like, and he sleeps with her, but then finds that it's a betrayal to sleep with his like the girl who's on this journey with him, because that would be cheating. But you hooked up with what, like, a different version of your wife that's not your wife is not your wife. Anyways, I DNF'd it because I said no. 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 And my other DNF was One of Our Kind, because I feel like I want to believe that what you're trying, like, actually, here's the thing. I don't know what you're saying with this book, because I have an idea of what you should be saying with this book. And yet, somehow, I DNF'd halfway through, because, first of all, why is she not more terrified? If she is a pro bono, like, lawyer who works with civil rights and like, misses her LA community, why, when she's in this like black paradise, does she not clock that everyone is like, what is that saying when people are like, not everyone is kinfolk? Or what is that quote? Anyways, you're not clocking that like something is happening. Your like views are not being shared. But then it ends. It ends. Actually, and I just don't understand. I don't think she had a clear vision of what she wanted to say about like the beauty industry and like Western beauty standards and whitewashing and white passingness and possibly like mixedness. I don't think she had a clear idea of what she wanted to say or her thoughts on this topic, because I was like, what are we doing? And I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So I DNF'd it. So those are my 5 DNFs for 2025. My 5 stars of 2025, where one day everyone will have always been against this, which I've been seeing that if you read this, you need to read another book called Perfect Victims, which is on my TBR, because I did not know that people were like, if you're going to recommend this book, you also need to be recommending this book. And I'm not 100% sure what the discourse is around that, but I have seen that, and I do want to read and pick that book up. So yeah, one day everyone will always been against this. I feel like everyone was reading it, or it made some noise when it came out. Is a book about coming to the realization of how like horrific it is, all the horrificness that the West does to other people, and being from the West is what I like took from it. So yeah, that book made me sit down. I wrote an essay. I always joke that like I could write an essay. I whipped out a notebook and I wrote 5-10 pages of just like thoughts and quotes and like, so it's sitting somewhere in this room, never to see the light of day, because, you know, I don't want it to. And then we have The Long Game, which you can't really read unless you read Heated Rivalry, but The Long Game, to me, honestly, was so good. I have never really experienced, well, I feel like sequels, I've never read a romantic sequel, and I feel like this was like the perfect sequel. Like everything felt like it made sense, although I did want to shake a character or two, and I'm very excited for what Jacob Tierney is going to do in season 2. And The Long Game, it was where all of the heart of the story to me personally was. And so I really enjoyed it. This, again, is the sequel to Heat of Rivalry, which is, if you've not watched the TV show or been a part of the original fandom, it's just about 2 hockey players, 2 very youthful hockey players. I think they start when they're 17 in like 2008 or 18 in 2008. They are in fact millennials, as people say, a millennial timepiece of when they get together. They're pro hockey players. They end up being rivals because they end up being on like the most rivalry team kind of thing, but yet they fall in love. So, and then book 2 is them continuing to be in love, but dealing with the hardships that can come along when you are actually in an established relationship and things change and there's miscommunication, even though you've learned to communicate and whatnot and stuff like that. So, it was good. I sobbed throughout that whole book. It was so good. Then we have To Clutch a Razor, which is a sequel to Among Crows. I feel like I'm the only one who yaps about this. But it's a sequel and hoping for a third. They're novellas. And so When Among Crows is a story about a man who comes from a family of knights of sorts who is trained to kill monsters. And in this world we have Leshies, we have Baba Yaga. It's Slavic lore, which I love. And the first book ends with like a deal with, or you believe that he may be making a deal with Baba Yaga. Book 2, he has in fact made a deal with Baba Yaga, and he kind of has to fulfill that deal / do some things because he realizes he needs to get something back, and Baba Yaga will not let him have it until he does what he needs to do. So, that's book 2. I was so stressed out for all of the 200 pages because I was like, oh no, because some things happen, and it really stressed me out. Some family dynamics. I was, screaming. However, I really do want book 3. I'm really hoping that book 3, there is a relationship that develops, and I want more than just a singular, like, crumb. I need more. Please. Please provide it to me. And the publisher, I believe, is Tor. Tor, please. Please let them make book 3. Please. Please. I will buy it. I will talk about it. Send me an arc. Imagine. I can't even imagine it ever being interesting enough for someone to look at my content and be like, we'll send you a book. But one could dream. And if I could dream, I would be book 3 in whatever that novella series is. For When Among Crows and To Clutch a Razor. We're manifesting, I guess. And then my other 5-star was Sunrise on the Reaping. Do I need to say anything more than that? This book was so good and so devastating. On so many levels. I was underprepared for the whole thing. But honestly, I'm so glad it's over and done with, because if I had to watch other people review it and hear the like hype and or understanding around this book or the callbacks on like TikTok or anything, there's no way I would have picked up that book. So I'm glad that I sat my happy little butt here and read it all in one day, because I don't think I could pick it up if I knew the devastation that was like heading my way or had like a clue or a hint. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? So the last one was I Was a Teenage Slasher. 5 stars, dude. I think this book is so well paced, honestly, too. So well paced and so melancholy the whole time. Truly a vibe. And I'm realizing that I really just enjoy things that take place in Texas. And it being in West Texas, a place that I have visited. Although it does take place in a much smaller place than I've been, because I've been to both Midland and Odessa, and they talk about Midland and Odessa being like the big cities. So, and me just giggling like Midland and Odessa are not, you know what I mean? But I can't imagine being in a town smaller than that and then imagining like, I mean, Midland and Odessa have like an airport. You know what I mean? Like, whoa, not air transportation. So I really like that. And I really liked the pacing of the book, and I really liked how melancholy it kind of was. And I was like, and I was just devastated by the end. Devastated. And I think because it was I was venturing into like horror, that it was probably the first thing that I read for horror. Well, I did a whole vlog, so I read more than one like horror, but it was like the first time that I could actually like catch the like connotations and the throwbacks to like the slasher genre. It was my first slasher, but it was nice that I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I knew enough about slasher conventions to like catch these bits, because I still was surprised at the end because I clearly do not know everything about slashers, and so therefore missed like a pivotal part of the story and was shocked and awed when it happened. Those are my 5 stars. We're gonna go back to being a negative Ned and do my 5 2 stars. We've got Sweet Venom. This book was over the top. It was ridiculous in a way that it didn't need to be. Okay, it is book 2 in this like hockey, new adult mafia romance, and it was ridiculous. Because let's set the scene. In book 1, spoilers for Beautiful Venom, the main character is Delilah. Her friend, Violet, is in a coma. Okay, something happened, she's been attacked, she's in a coma, and her friend Delilah, her whole story starts because she's like, I've got to find out why she's in a coma, and I must attend this school because she thinks it's related to this like mafia trio or whatever. So she goes, and her story begins, right? So then, the whole time, her friend Violet is in a coma. We go back to book 2, and when when we meet her in book 2, Violet is not in a coma, obviously, she's just well. So we're doing a lot of like, now we're over here, right? In the pre-timeline of Delilah doing whatever. And let me tell you what, we go through this motion of the ocean. And she's not in a coma, she's not doing that. And then you realize what makes her go into a coma, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, what? That was your decision-making, girly? Because then she comes out of a coma, obviously, because in book 1 she's come out of the coma. So now she's out of a coma and we now have to proceed forward. But then something else happens that just seems stupid, because obviously there's a book 3. And if you've ever read anything Rena Kent, she tells you who the couples are in the next coming books. So it's not really a spoiler, but I guess a spoiler. And so you know what book 3 is going to be like. So there's an event that happens. And I think it's supposed to invoke like emotions. And I'm like, well, this is silly because book 3 exists. And I was like, okay, so this was stupid. This doesn't even really make sense. Somehow this timeline doesn't feel like it actually lines up over here. And then you're telling me that this event is supposed to happen, but I know it can't be true because that event happens. So that means that also now in book 3, the timelines are going to be like this. Like book 2, this is going to be book 3 and book 3. And I don't know what she's doing. But it was so much. And then like the part that killed me, I think I said it in a video. Or I don't know. I think I said it. But it was like reading a mafia romance, right? Or reading a dark romance. Reading sometimes requires a suspension of disbelief, right? And of like physics and of all these things. And you're just like la la land in your head in a vibe. But I don't like the acknowledgement that you are I don't like that these girly pops acknowledge that their boyfriends are like mafia people who murder people, because it's like something, there's no real serious, like, you take me out of the story when you do that, because what are we doing? Are we actually really having this conversation? Because like in real life, this conversation would never be had. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are married to mafia people and are falling for the mob and have to have conversations like, well, he's just a boy and he murders sometimes. Because maybe I can't picture myself ever being a part of that situation, or like having those conversations. That I was just like, girl, can we not acknowledge it? Can you find any other reason why you're like iffy about him? And just like, let's forget that he's in the mob. Can we just, do you know what I mean? I don't know. Then I had double apex. I read this book like at the beginning of the year, and it was 2 stars because I really couldn't stand the female main character. She was giving, honestly, 2008. Like, the things that were coming out of her mouth, I was like, I'm sorry. What? But then also, so she was like insufferable. Insufferable for sure. And and I typically like a girly pop that most people don't like. I like, you know, someone a little antisocial. I like a little bit of a grump. I like a little bit of a sassafras. I like a little bit of a brat. But there was something about her that I could not vibe with. I was like, girl, I don't want to be in your head or on a fly on the wall while you're interacting with anybody. Please stop. And then I didn't have a problem with like the male main character. However, I did find it really weird that they made him like Eastern European and then made like his sister be kidnapped by like corrupt Eastern European people. Because it just felt very like xenophobic, because I feel like that's a stereotype that people think that like Eastern Europe is like corrupt and like bad and like you're like, again, mobsters is what I feel like I've been portrayed to believe of Eastern Europe, which I know like is a stereotype, and I just like found it icky that it was in my books. I was like, you could have found any other backstory for him, but then you give him this what feels like very stereotypical, or something that I can clock as stereotypical for like that region. And I don't know, I didn't like it, because why does his sister gotta get kidnapped? But like, or like held for ransom. I don't know, I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Next, what is it that I also gave 2 stars? Oh, Love in the Time of Serial Killers. I really should have DNF'd this book, but because I wanted to hit my reading goal, I pushed through. This book pissed me off in the sense, or it didn't piss me off, I should take that back. It annoyed me because I was sitting here and she was saying all these things about how this man knows all these things about her, and oh my goodness, how does he know these things? Well, really, I was more like, how does he know these things? She's not spending any time with him and they're not having any real conversations. You thought he was a serial killer because you're so into true crime that when he went to like help you, you were like, he's gonna murder me. You will murder me? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he knows this and then he knows that, but then you're not interacting with him. And I was like, okay, so is he stalking you? Because you're not giving me anything to go off of. And it was just, I don't know. I didn't believe the love story at all. And then she kept saying that she was like not very attractive. And I was like, are you trying? It felt like she was alluding that she was fat. And I was like, are you telling me that you don't think fat girls are attractive? Because fat girls can also be pretty. But then I was like, am I misinterpreting this? Is she not trying to communicate that? Because like, what is happening? So I didn't like it. I didn't like it. So, but I did finish it, unfortunately. So it did get 2 stars from me. Next, oh my gosh. And I did this to myself. I read Saving Rain. Okay. I literally did myself dirty because Teddy Hamilton's on it, and we all love Teddy Hamilton's voice. I love listening to that man speak. I could listen to him all day. I do listen to him, in fact, all day. And so he was on the audiobook and I was like, sure, I'll listen. And I was unprepared for the step-sibling trope that is this book. And I should have also DNF'd this one, but I didn't because I was like, well, I've never read a step-sibling trope. Let's see how it goes. But I could not take the amount of times they were like, we're step-siblings before they slept together, while they slept together, and after they slept together. They were like, we're step-siblings, we're step-siblings. They told the whole tiny town, step-siblings. And I was like, oh, well, clearly someone's got to say a thing or two about like, you sure about that? And not a soul. Because of course, why would it? I'm reading a romance. It has to end happily ever after. So nobody's gonna give them shit or like be like, really? So your stepbrother? And I just couldn't take the amount of times I kept saying that they were step-siblings. And then I learned through my roommate that is just something that some people really enjoy being like reading and being told about repeatedly. And it's not really my cup of tea. I have learned through now, I have accidentally read 3 step-sibling romances. And I find I have no problem reading a step-sibling romance as long as it's really not that serious. Just like No Fault London is a movie I watched, which is also a step-sibling romance. You can say like, oh, we're step-siblings, right? You can fling it out there and I can be like, oh, sure. But then I never really want to hear about it again. Because then I can just like create the illusion that like you guys are just living in a house together like roommates. And boom, bada bing. You know what I mean? I cannot do the continuous like informing me repeatedly because then I'm just like, but again, not for me. Not for me. For other people. But it was my first step-sibling romance, and I literally just toughed it out because I needed to know if anyone was going to say anything to him, and they don't. They don't. But, you know, whatever. Oh, last but not least, I gave Love is a War Song 2 stars because and this is about me and not really about well, you know, reading is subjective. I have now learned, thanks to Love is a War Song, that I do not like fish out of water trope. You cannot tell me that this person is so incompetent that they're trancing around with untied shoes and like getting their hair bit off by a horse, but I'm also supposed to believe that they have managed to become a world superstar. I just can't. You also can't make me, like, I do not believe you that, and maybe this is a me thing. I just can't believe you that an Indigenous person, right, and I'm not Indigenous, and I honestly do not have any Indigenous friends or know anyone like in like close to not close circles that are Indigenous. So perhaps I'm wrong, but I just can't imagine an Indigenous person living in the world we're living who is aware that they themselves are also Indigenous, right? Putting on a headdress and parading around on a stage and then being shocked that other people and other Indigenous folks are upset. Because I would imagine you would be aware of this like societal like issues that face Indigenous people as an Indigenous person yourself, and probably also the racism you have experienced yourself. But maybe I'm wrong. I couldn't break that suspension because I was like, there's no way that someone is this like obtuse. And maybe they are. But because I couldn't suspend my disbelief, excuse me, sorry. I was like, I didn't have a good time. Also, I realized I don't like an incompetent woman. I don't. Actually, I realized I don't like incompetence actually at all. In real life and in the books I read. So that was on me. It was, I think, other than that, like, kind of cutesy. It was a fun time. I didn't, like, hate my life, but I was just like, girl. Because also when he was like, I also didn't like that, I think the love interest was like, I'll teach you how to be Indian. And I feel some type of way. And maybe that's because I'm a mixed girly. That I'm just like, I don't know. It wasn't, I don't know. It didn't, like, it rubbed me the wrong way. Because there are so many ways in which people can be like the identities that they hold that I just don't, I just didn't like it. Which means, you know, just not for me. So, 2 stars. Now we've got my 5 rereads of the year. And this is kind of cheating because one of the rereads is a series. So I'm counting that as like a singular book instead of like technically the 3 books that it was. The first things that I reread for the year were actually the Raven cycle. I read, what is it? The Raven Boys, The Dream Thieves, and Blue Lily Lily Blue. I reread those in intention to read like the last one because I was really looking for, I think I read these at the beginning of the year for like an atmosphere. I wanted like a fall vibe because it was actually kind of cold for a little bit at the beginning of this year. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I want this. And I made it all the way to book 3 and then I never went for the Raven King. So, but that is, we're going to count that as 1. So that way we can keep with the 5 theme, okay? So that's what I read. The second thing I probably reread was The Hunger Games because I had read Sunrise on the Reaping and I wanted to go back and catch all the little things since Sunrise was so on my mind that I was like, oh, this would be perfect to catch all the things that this book sets up for you to like see and all like the devastating additional heartbreak I could experience reading The Hunger Games. And I just got to the first book. This book and the next book are some of the ones that I reread the most. God of Fury, again. I don't know why, but all of a sudden this started to pop off on my like For You page on TikTok. Then I was like, what is this book? And it was my first introduction to Rena Kent. tough. I say tough as if like I haven't already read this book like 3 or 4 times. And trigger warnings for it. Obviously, it's a dark mafia romance, but also there are some like some not so great things that happen to one of the main characters in his past. But you know, I think, what is this? Teddy Hamilton also does this one. And I ate it up. And I was like, oh, for sure. I think I read it in like 2 days. And it's like a 600-page book. And sometimes I wish, side story, we're taking a side quest. This is what I wish Mate and Bride would have done with Ali Hazelwood. Like, girl, just write the 600 paranormal shifter romance. I saw here, there is basically no plot in God of Fury. None. 0. Girl, just write it. Just write. I know you want to, so do it. Because I'll say here, I read that 600-page one and I was like, ate it up. I've read it 3 or 4 times. Sometimes when I'm just like in a slump or I just want something smutty and yummy, that like, it's a comfort read. And if you would have told me, who started reading in 2021, that I would reread and find like a smutty dark mafia romance, a comfort read that I have gone back to multiple times, I would have laughed at you. So, yeah. Next on that list, continuing on in that very same fashion, I reread Kiss the Villain another 3 or 4 times. This one was outweighed God of Fury for a little bit because I do enjoy the smut in Kiss the Villain a lot more. This is like the spin-off of the Legacy of God series, which is what God of Fury is in the Rena Kent universe, because you get a side character from the like friend group that is the Gods of Fury or whatever. So, and that Kiss the Villain is also helps to spin off like that hockey, like Sweet Venom that I was like, nope, she's gotta go. I really like the smut better, or the triggers, I could say. The kink in Kiss the Villain way more than God of Fury. But then I reread God of Fury after rereading like Kiss the Villain like 3 times, that I was like, oh, actually, I think my favorite overall for like the whole story is God of Fury. And like if I just want to hit smutty scenes, Kiss the Villain for sure. But the better overarching story that actually is like an enjoyable time to reread the entire thing and I'm not skipping through stuff is God of Fury. So those, yummy. Read those again. Earlier reader me would never believe. And then the last thing I reread is Heated Rivalry. It's a good time. It's smutty. I get why it blew up. Also, the characters clearly are solid characters because they came out to be like an amazing TV show. But I reread this one because I read it after watching the first 2 episodes, read it, then read other books and series, bonus chapters, and then rewatched the series some more, and then wanted to go back by episode 3 or so. I then reread it to catch like what I was missing after rewatching all of this all the time and what I would be setting myself up. So like in the middle of it, whatnot, even though, because episode 3 really disappointed me, I thought it was going to be like the club and the freak out and the tune him out, and it wasn't. That's episode 4. Episode 3 is Game Changer. And not that any of you follow me on TikTok, but I do amend. Was very disappointed by episode 3, and now that the series is out and over, I understand the vision and the need to put 3 in. I'm still sometimes really disappointed that like you really need that for like episode 5 to really hit. But I will give it to you because it gave us like You Deserve Sunshine, and I didn't know that when I was watching episode 3 that like You Deserve Sunshine was going to be such a massive payoff in episode 5. So now the 5 things I would recommend that I read this year to other people would be Backhanded Compliments. This is a sapphic tennis romance, but it's also in a world where you have soulmates. And I really loved it. I do. And I should have kind of figured that I would enjoy it because I like Ashley Poston's writing, which is like magicalness in the real world. But something about like, I love a soulmate AU, like for sure. And I ate this one up. I also ate it up because it was a Heart Comfort, and now I understand why people like Heart Comfort. Ate it up. Oh my god, it's just so good. And then, as someone who has played tennis and who loves tennis, I enjoyed the tennis aspect. I felt like it was the perfect amount of sport, as well as when they're describing the shots and whatnot. As someone who's played tennis, I could visualize the whole game in my head. Like I was there. So I really loved it. And I think the pacing, honestly, because it was a soulmate, like, AU, they got together, like, not really fast, but, like, it helped me suspend my disbelief that I was like, yeah. Because I feel like sometimes in romance novels you read it and you're like, this feels really fast. And obviously you have to just, because it's just a book, it's whatever, but it really felt like, okay, I get why, even though they're really hesitant and they're pulling back and whatever, they're still, like, doing the things, or they're getting together, or they're being drawn to. Because I was like, oh, this magical element of being soulmates, like, who wouldn't want to try with their soulmate? You know what I mean? So I loved it. I do think it should have had a second epilogue to have the other player, because I think it was only one player that got essentially an epilogue that you follow through, and I think it would have been nice to have the second player have the second character have an epilogue to see how the relationship also impacted them and their, like, growth in the actual sport. So I love backhanded compliments. I feel like I did do, I think, a vlog where I read tennis romances, and I think this was the only one I liked. And there is one coming up this year that I'm excited for, and I hope it goes really well, because the other ones I just didn't like it. And maybe it's harder for me to find a tennis romance that I like because I myself have played the sport, that I'm like, no. Because I was like, there are a couple of Formula 1 romances that I really like, and obviously I don't drive a Formula 1 car, or else I wouldn't be making YouTube videos and sitting unemployed. You know what I mean? Or actually, well, a lot of people have driven F1 cars and never make it past a year, so maybe I would be here. I would recommend Futbolista, which is a new adult romance that takes place in Corpus Christi at essentially like the A&M. If you're in Texas, you know. But they're the Islanders, and it's about one of the boys plays soccer, and he dreams of playing at, like, the national level, and the other one is I think he's just like a student of philosophy. He's like studying philosophy at the school, and yeah, and it's just them. Well, I don't want to really, like, I just really liked it because being from Texas and having some knowledge of, like, Corpus and some understanding of, like, the family dynamics, I just really enjoyed it, and I felt like it was very heartfelt, and I ate it up. I also, disclaimer, have read nearly all of this author's other work other than, like, I think 1,000 somethings, because I've read Canto Contigo, and then also Onder and Santi were here. I loved both of those books as well. Side Quest, I would also recommend those books. They're YA books, but oh, they're so good. Like, Canto Contigo talks about grief. I feel like one of the main focuses is grief there. And then in Andy and Saunter were here, especially now with the prolificness that is ice, they talk about ice and La Migre and what that dynamic, like, does to people, but really more, and it's like, there's a whole note at the beginning of that book that just says that, like, he is not, like, writing, their pronouns are they, them. The author is not, it basically says that they're writing this because sometimes you think you're being an ally to the community, and then you find out you are in fact not being an ally to the community. And so it's a book about someone who loves someone who is an immigrant, and what, like, that means him not always being a good ally to people that you love and care about, even though you love and care about them. And so I just thought it was really good. It also uses the gender neutral, like, Spanish with the E instead of the, like, I think A and O, essentially, for the most part. So that was really cool. It's just really cool. And there's Spanish incorporated into all of Johnny Garzavilla's books, and I, like, love that. It's my, like, I love it, and I really hope they're writing another book, because I just really do. So Futbolista, because it takes place in Texas. Well, also all of their books take place in Texas. And then Pole Position, which is an F1 romance that I remember, I still, right now, I think I read at the beginning of the year, I remember having a good time. And it's because I think they're, it's a bit of an age gap, but they're also like enemies to lovers because they're on the same team in this Formula 1 team. And as you know, if you watch Formula 1, your real rival is not the other teams, it's the other driver, because they're working with the same machinery as you. And the only true test of what the car can and cannot do. And so you and your bud, they're also the only, like, you're stuck with these people too. So, like, it's the perfect, like, forced proximity as well, because you've got to do all these media days and stuff. And so I really enjoyed that dynamic of like the older guy, the younger guy, the forced proximity, a little bit of, they both admire each other in different ways, but are also like, you know, and there is one silly thing where they share a trailer, which is obviously just for the plot, because in real life they would not be sharing a trailer. But I really liked it. I think the only thing I didn't like about this is there's like a moment in time where they talk about a dynamic that they're both interested in, like in their minds, and it never comes to fruition. And a pet peeve of mine is, do not tell me people are thinking these thoughts and then not let it manifest. That really upsets me in a book. And so that was probably the only thing. But other than that, like, this is one of the Formula One romances, because I think at this point I've read like maybe 15, maybe even 20, that like has stuck with me, and I remember having like a fun time. And it's why it's on the recommendation list, obviously. Then we have, Fable for the End of the World. I'm not really sure why I said that I would recommend this one. Probably because it's probably like an easy comp tire for actual Hunger Games. This is, in fact, the Hunger Games, but set in what would be like 2055, maybe. And this is like, instead of like the Tesserae system in the Hunger Games, you take on debt, which I feel like is very poignant in this current day and age. And when you've reached a certain level of debt due to consumerism or having to buy like your like necessities and whatnot without having the needs, like the means to, you then must go and participate in the Hunger Games. You then get selected, and this angel of sorts gets to hunt you for about 2 weeks. And if you can outlive this master programmed human whose whole design is to murder you, then you get to live. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, that in this world, just because you took out $500,000 or like credits and you're in that much debt does not mean that you yourself have got to go. You can pick another person. And yes, that means that if your parents commit the horrid sin of collecting 500,000 credits of debt, they too can send just you, their least favorite child, into the war zone. And you get to battle for your life, and not the person who collected the, like, made the debt. So there's that. And much like the Hunger Games, where it's like televised. It is in fact televised everywhere. But in this world, we've got phones, we've got tablets, we've got computers. And so it's everywhere. It cannot be turned off. And it goes on for 2 weeks. And it's like horrid because it just, there's a lot. It's like, I think there might be triggers for it. And I think you should check the triggers for sure. But I was devastated. It was one of those books where I had to stop listening to it auditorily because I was so overwhelmed and like freaked out with what was happening. And it's one of the only able reads that I've really, really liked. Like, I really enjoyed The Wolf and the Woodsman back when it first came out, and I've been chasing that high ever since. And I would have to say that Fable for the End of the World really got me. Like, I would, at the end of the book, devastated. I was like, no! Oh, but I thought it was really good. I don't really know if I should be recommending that book. I don't know if it's for a greater audience. It is YA, much like the Hunger Games. I just like, that's another book that like is still sitting with me right now. And last but not least, honestly, I would recommend God of Fury. Check triggers. But I think it's a fun time. I think it's just two dudes getting together. I don't know. I eat it up. I really do. I do like the dynamic, because I was like, the beginning of it doesn't make any sense because I didn't read the rest of the God of Legacies, and maybe I would know why Brandon is listening to a text message and why Nikolai feels the urge to text Brandon. And if I read the other books, which I have read the other books, but none of them makes, I don't understand, like, so I'm not, you know what I need? You know what I need? Come close. I need to find YouTube, the algorithm, someone provide me with a giant timeline of all of the God of Legacy that's sorry about that. My roommate came home. I had to shut the door, and now I'm distracted. I have no idea what I was going to say about God of Fury. Oh, that's what I was saying, is that I need someone to put together like a compilation, or if anybody sees this and knows someone who has put together like an entire Gods of Legacies timeline for me, let me know. Drop it in the comment section down below. And now that I've gone over my 2025 fives, I guess I can show you my statistics for Q4. Hopefully they're on the screen. Overall statistic for me from Storygraph. I wish I knew how to make these on my own and not have to use Storygraph, but all the data's already here, so boom, bada, bing, baby. But yeah, 2025 was an alright reading year. It could have been better. It could have been worse. I hit several slumps, and my like reach goal for what I wanted to read was like 95 books, and I think I only got 82, because really in reality I was like, my goal is 80, but I really dream of like 95 to 100. And I made it to 82. And honestly, we're gonna take it. So, and well, because I reached my goal of reducing my physical TBR. I reached my goal of 80 books. I read about 30 to 50% diversely. So I qualified diversely as anybody who doesn't share an identity with me, whether that be a character or the author. Yeah. As long as I wasn't reading from like my exact POV, I considered it diverse in a sense. And I realized looking at some of my stuff that I really do need to make, I was still doing a lot of white queer stuff, and I really need to do better at looking at BIPOC queer stuff as well, because I'm finding I do read a lot of queer books, but it's a lot of white queers, and I need to do better of that. So 2026, that's my goal. And I did not meet my goal of reading 12 nonfictions. I read 3, and I had a goal to go to an in real life book club, and I chickened out every single time. And so this year, I believe it is to read 80 books, to read more diversely and maintain the like level of at least diversity that I have been reading. So it's to just like level up. I think I've moved my nonfictions down to 6. Let's try 6 nonfictions. And maybe that's a more attainable goal, because I thought 12 nonfictions, 1 a month, was enough. Like I was like, oh, that's fine. And then I didn't want to do it. I thought about, so we'll do 6, because maybe that'll stop me from being hesitant of like, oh, well, maybe I can read one every other month, and maybe that will help like get me going into the nonfiction world. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? And I think those are my only goals. So 6 nonfiction, 80 books, to read, to maintain at least 30 to 50% diversity, and to level it up, and to find more diversity within the diversity of the books. To intersect more diversely the identities that I'm already like, you know what I mean? I feel like that doesn't make any sense, but I know what I mean. And hopefully you do too. And if not, sorry. And, you know, side quests. I really would love, stop being such a chicken about going to a book club and just commit to the bit. But I'm also such a mood reader that that's tough. And I'm like, maybe I should just like force myself to read it. And I'm like, well, that's not a fun time either. But let's try again to go to a singular in-person book club. And that's about it. Those are my reading goals. Those are my reading statistics for 2025. I guess let me know, what is something like you DNF'd? You gave 5 stars, 2 stars. What were some of your rereads? What are some of your recommendations for what you read all of 2025? I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you didn't, live your best life. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.